It is time for another audience caller episode of the Real Stuff podcast. This one is just a feel-good episode. I know it's going to inspire so many of you out there to think about your futures and maybe even to reconsider your right nows. Gisele wrote in to me from her Airstream, where she currently lives a nomadic lifestyle with her husband. You're going to hear her entire story of selling all of her belongings, including her dream house in the suburbs, and moving her entire life into a van to travel the country. This is a story of downsizing, of simplifying, exploring, and overall just rediscovering yourself, even after your kids have grown up, once you're in that phase 2 of life. I know I've spoken about this a bit before, but I do have one slight regret in my life, and that is that Michael and I did not travel and live somewhere else before we had a baby. We talk about how amazing it would have been to move to maybe a tropical place, a warmer climate. You probably know my number one wish is Hawaii. You also probably know I've never been to Hawaii, but that I'm for some reason obsessed with it and think that I deeply belong there. And I talk with Michael all the time about how we should have done that before Milo was born. And listen, it's easier said than done because before he was born, we really couldn't have done that because Michael didn't have a remote work from home job. It was only after COVID and the whole pandemic that jobs moved remote, and then we pretty quickly had a baby. So now he's working from home full time, but we are already deep into parenting, and we just don't feel it's in the cards for us personally to move to a new state or to an island far away and be isolated from our two families who we feel so close to and who are such a huge part of our childcare team and our lives. But all that said, I hear Gisele's story and it brings me so much joy and hope to hear that she's at this, second stage of her life. Her child is grown up, he's in college, and now she's making these moves and starting what I would consider to be almost an entirely new existence and life for herself. So this is a hopeful episode. It's inspiring. It will really remind you that you are never too old or at too late of a stage in life to make a big change. And at any time, you really can create your own destiny and choose the type of lifestyle you want to live and what type of community you want to be a part of. Before we get into today's episode, I am so excited about an article that was written about our show recently. It was from House Magazine, and the article was titled, "Lucie Fink Boldly Explores Humanity in Her New Podcast, The Real Stuff." And that headline could not have captured my hope with this podcast anymore. My goal was to bring on people from all walks of life to discuss topics that are generally undiscussed, maybe a little taboo, and in the case of today's episode, just interesting topics and unique topics that highlight humanity and show people who are doing things differently and maybe taking a different path in life. I know you are going to fall in love with Gisele. She was so much fun to talk to. The two of us actually stayed on the call for another 45 minutes after the recording and just kept talking. I didn't want to end. And we've stayed in touch. I followed her on social media, and I'm going to pop her handle in the show notes if you're interested in following her nomadic lifestyle. So let's get into today's episode and let's hear Gisele's amazing story. I want to get started and first hear just a little bit about your background with your husband. I know your son is now 19, but I'd love to hear about your marriage kind of, before he left the house.
Yeah, he just turned 20. Which is crazy to me because, we got married young, my husband and I. I mean, we were 20 and 21, which I feel like is really young. But, we fell in love quickly and hard, and we're both from single parent households. So I think that really affected our marriage a lot in the sense that we really have always tried really hard to make our marriage work. Mm-hmm. We both grew up in New York City, and we moved to the Philly suburbs when our son was 2, just to give him a better life. And we lived in a small town called Phoenixville for about 16 years, which was a great town to raise our kid in. I come from immigrant parents, so I have this ingrained in my head. You go to school, you have a career, you buy a house, all these things that you have to do to be successful in life, right? And we did, we bought our dream home, which was this beautiful house with a beautiful little white picket fence. And I absolutely loved our house. I was like, oh, we've made it. And it was great at first because you had family and friends visiting. But then over time, the pandemic hit and all of a sudden you got this big, 3,000 square foot house and it's just the three of us and a dog. We adjusted to pandemic life. And it was hard because we lost loved ones. We lost all our remaining grandparents, and it was pretty tragic. For me and my husband, our relationship was really affected a lot during the pandemic. And everywhere I looked, people were getting divorced left and right. So, we started therapy and we went to couples counseling, which we still do to this day. For us, it was just like we felt like we needed a change. And that's kind of where the wheels started turning on what can we do different. Life is too short. That was a big one for us, like especially like losing people we love so suddenly. So that's kind of where we started.
Yeah. So just so you can take me back, how old were you when you two first got married?
20 and 21.
Okay, so you were on the young side, but you were adults.
Yeah. We had been together for 2 years, and then because we got married young, we waited 4 years to have our son. We waited a bit.
And this whole pandemic changing things, at that point, correct me if I'm wrong, but your son is in high school?
Yeah, he was in high school.
Okay. Can you walk me through the conversations that you and your husband had? I don't know if it was before your son went off to college or after he had already left, when you guys decided, let's shake things up and totally change our lives.
Well, for us, it was more an experience that happened, right? During the pandemic, we went to visit family in Texas, and it was still questionable about flying. I mean, I think by then we were all vaccinated and everything, but we were still kind of like hesitant to get on a plane. So we decided to take a road trip out to Texas. And I remember thinking like, let's try not to kill each other on this road trip because it was a long drive, right? With our son in tow. So we drove off to Texas. And during the time, we had so much fun during that road trip. And we met a family that had an RV, and they were my son. It was one of his closest friends who he'd never met in person because he played virtually online with him in the gaming community.
Wow. What a world we live in where you could have a real friend like that.
Virtual friends.
Yeah.
So we went to go meet his family. And for me, like, they were an African-American family and they had an RV. And I was like, we can do that. Like, it was just kind of like weird to say it, but it's just, I was so shocked by it. And I remember saying to my husband, I always wanted to get an RV when we retired, but like seeing someone that looked like me in an RV, I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. So we started talking to them about it. And then by the time we headed back from that trip, we were like, we should consider maybe getting an RV. And that's kind of where the wheels started turning. And then my husband's job stayed fully remote. And when that happened, we were like, wait, if you're remote, I mean, I can do something else and we can just sell the house and do this now, And that's kind of where the conversation started.
When you two were married and you had your kid and you're bringing him up, did you travel a lot as a family?
We didn't till the later years. We got married, we were dirt poor when we got married, and we were very much on a fixed income. So with daycare, it was very costly at the time to really take a real vacation. But we did like weekend trips, and eventually we started camping. We did get a tent, and that was a big deal for me because I am a city girl. So me in a tent was like a little scary.
So when you were living in this house, do you mind sharing when you first bought this dream house of yours, how much it cost?
Yeah, our house was just under $400,000 when we bought it. And that was in 2016, I want to say.
And then when you sold it?
We sold it for almost $600,000.
Wow, good investment.
It was a good investment.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Although, I know being a homeowner, you sink a lot of cash into the house to upkeep it. So it might have been more of an even break. But still, it's nice to see on paper that you sell it for more than you buy it for.
Yeah, and we turned into a smart home, which I think was a big selling point. So we just took advantage and said, you know what? Our son's going off to college. Let's sell it. Let's buy an RV that we want, and let's hit the road. And that's exactly what we did.
How much did that RV cost?
My RV was about $135,000.
How does that stack up in terms of RV prices? I have no concept.
It's considered a luxury RV. We have an Airstream.
Okay.
And they've been around for over 90 years. They kind of look like silver Twinkies.
Yeah, I know what they look like. I've definitely seen them at Palm Springs resorts. They look really trendy.
Yes, they are. I mean, it took us a year of shopping and trying to figure out what we wanted. And the big selling point for Airstream for us was that it really holds up its value. So if we decided that we didn't like it, we could still sell it for a good price. And that was a big thing for us.
So, this life that you live right now, first of all, it sounds kind of idyllic. My first question here is, when you say you sold everything, did you really sell? I mean, I'm sure your furniture had to go, but what about all the things that people just accumulate? I don't know if your parents left you with boxes of things or if you kept things from your son's upbringing. How did you actually
We
get rid of your stuff?
we nailed it down to 5 bins, and 5 bins have all the awards and accolades and photos and everything in 5 bins that sit in our friend's garage in Pittsburgh.
Wow, that's a nice friend.
I mean, it did take a couple of tries. I'm not going to say that it happened like so fast, because after we sold the house, we still had stuff left over. So a couple people held things for us, and we still went on some trips. And then we came back to like get rid of remaining stuff, because we had cars to sell, motorcycles to sell. It did take some time to try to get rid of everything. I mean, I sold and gave away as much as I could. And in the end, I had one of those like junk removal companies come and just take everything else. And, you know, I'll be frank with you, like for someone who grew up, you know, poor and struggled and worked so hard to get what they had, I was very attached to my material things. And I dealt with it a lot in therapy, surprisingly, like about these attachments to things. From what I've read, when people grow up in poverty, we tend to sometimes have a more of a pack rat mentality, and not on purpose, but we just value things a lot more, that it's really hard to get rid of stuff.
I can imagine. And, you know, I didn't grow up in poverty, and I feel attached to my things. And frequently I go through our house and, you know, I have a few different areas of the house where stuff piles up. I try to purge every so often and to go through and just get rid of things I don't need. It is so hard. For some reason, when something's in your possession, even, I can even say confidently, even something you didn't purchase, but just something that was sent to you or a gift, it's so hard to get rid of physical things. I was going to ask you how it felt after you finally were able to do it, or while you were doing it. I'm sure you said you're working through it in therapy, but like, did it feel just so light after the fact?
I think I was just trying to focus just on the goal, on the end goal. Because, I mean, I shed tears. I cried. It was really hard. And I remember having friends say, you know, seeing what you're going through is making me realize I need to get rid of stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure it was inspiring, you know, to a lot of people.
So it was. We had friends also going through these deep cleanings, you know, that we were inspiring them to do that. It was definitely really hard. I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat that.
So just so I understand, the plan was, we're selling this house, we're buying this Airstream, we're going to be mobile. Like, we're not going to have a home base. Was that the plan?
Yep.
And so what was your journey like? Where did you go first, and where are you now?
I am currently in Acton, California, which is just north of LA. When we started, so I will say something about RV life. Like, I've learned a lot about it. You can live RV life and live a luxurious RV life where you stay at beautiful 4-star RV resorts, or you can live off-grid where you pay nothing, right? And I've met people from all spectrums in this. So for us, you know, when we first started RVing, we RV'd like we were on vacation. And that was not a good thing. But we were novices. Like, we didn't know. We're like, oh, yeah, let's get these nice resorts and let's do this.
Can you give us an idea of how much those luxury RV resorts cost a night?
On average, about $100 to $120, maybe as high as $200 a night, depending where you are.
And that's just to park your RV in the lot?
Yeah, you park it they have like these little pads. You park in the pad. You usually get a water hookup, an electricity hookup, and sewer hookup. And that would cost you about that much. And then the amenities are like, you know, there's pools and spas and mini golf, you know, lots of different things. So
it's like a hotel, bring your own bed.
Basically, yes. And then you have, when you're off grid, you have to be self-sufficient on your own. And that was very daunting, but that's eventually what we have now 18 months later are enjoying very much being off grid. As for where we traveled, when we first got the RV, the very first trip we took, we literally, like, settlement was that day. We pulled out the driveway that morning of. That's how long it took, because we were literally trying to get the house ready for us to leave. And we pulled out and we drove to our son's school, because he was already in college for the summer. And we drove to the school in the RV and picked him up. And we went off to Canada. And we went to Niagara Falls. We went to Montreal and Toronto. And that was a kickoff trip for us, because my grandma, I was very close to my grandma, and when she passed away during the pandemic of COVID, unfortunately, and it was really, really hard for me. Like, I took it really hard. And, She did visit us during the pandemic. We had her come over for a week, and she talked about always wanting to take a road trip across the country. And then she always talked about this clock in Niagara Falls that was made of flowers, and how she never got to see the clock of flowers. So that was the very first thing we did. We went up to Niagara Falls and we went to go see the clock of flowers, and I have a necklace with her ashes, and they came with me, and that was kind of the kickoff to our journey.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, it was really, really nice. And we've gone all the way up and down the East Coast. We came across through Texas and Louisiana, and we ended up in California. We also went as far north as Wyoming and Washington. We've gone up and down the coast there as well.
Wow. And so I assume you dropped your son back at school, and then you and your husband embarked.
Yeah, we dropped him off at school and we left, and he comes and joins us during his breaks. He's actually on a break this year, this semester. He took the semester off. So he's with us for a few months now, and he's been with us. And, you know, he always said RV life is your thing. That's not my thing, that's your thing. So at first he wasn't a fan of joining us on trips. He was very much like grudging along, you know, but over time he's begun to really embrace it and enjoy it, and now talks about, you know, once he finishes school, he wants to buy a van. He's just like, I don't want to buy a house, I'm just gonna get a van and travel. And I'm like, that's awesome. So it's great to see.
Yeah, he's a good example.
Yeah.
If you are ever going to listen through an advertisement on a podcast, please, please, please let it be this one. You will not regret it. I personally want to shout about this company from the rooftops. So a couple weeks ago, I used a company called Songfinch to write a song for my twin sister, Allie. Basically, you go on their site, you choose a musician and a songwriter that you like based on some little samples of their work. You tell them in a questionnaire who you want to write a song for. You give them some details about your relationship with that person, things you want them to include, and then in just a few days, they write and record an original radio quality song for you that is completely unique, personal, and lasts forever. My sister had spine surgery recently, and I knew that this gift would put a huge smile on her face during recovery, and I am absolutely freaking out with how amazingly the song turned out. I chose a musician from Songfinch named James Freeborn. He wrote a song called Woven Together. I'm going to play a little clip of the song for you right here, right now.
Wish I could go back to summers and fruit snacks, bunk beds that we had to share our every dream. Wish the sun had never set on playing like we did, laughing when Dad said twins are a blessing. You made me who I am, every little feature, until the very end. We're woven together.
Allie also freaked out when she heard this song. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to pop up a screenshot of our text conversation. Our dad has always said, twins are a blessing. He said that in both of our wedding speeches, so that line was especially sweet to have included in the lyrics. And the song is now on Spotify, so we can listen to it anytime. I've already memorized the words. And whether you are getting a song made for Mother's Day, Father's Day, for an upcoming graduation, a wedding, or just to show a loved one how much you care, just like I did with Allie, start your song now to lock in a top Songfinch artist. For a limited time, Songfinch is letting the Real Stuff listeners upload their songs to Spotify for free so that you and that lucky person that you gift it to can listen to the song anytime, anywhere. Go to songfinch.com/realstuff and start your song. After you purchase, you will be prompted to add Spotify streaming for your original song, and it will be added for free. And that's a $50 value. So again, my URL is songfinch.com/realstuff. Please don't forget to share your song with me too. I really want to listen. songfinch.com/realstuff. So I want to hear, I'm so curious about the relationship element here that, you know, has changed between you and your husband, because being suburban parents and raising kids and being in the stage of life that I'm currently in, where, I mean, I'm even at just the very, very beginning of that. My kids aren't even in elementary school yet. I mean, I don't even have one of my two kids yet. So I'm still just a seedling being planted in the garden here. And I just have such a long time ahead of me of being a suburban parent. But already, ever since becoming a parent just 2 years ago, I've already noticed changes in my relationship with my husband, Michael. Obviously, we're still in the baby toddler phase, so I know that maybe as he grows, hopefully we'll be able to rekindle aspects of our relationship that we felt before we were in this very exhausting phase. But I'm really curious, once you were kind of out of the baby phase with your son and you and your husband are living in this suburban town, you know, you're in your dream house, how would you describe your connection with each other in terms of your sex life and just your emotional connection as husband and wife?
I think for us, we definitely would do these checks, you know, every like once or twice a year, we would do these like checks on our relationship and we would talk about whatever is bothering us, no matter how ugly it was, you know, and we would try to work on it. I mean, I totally get it because like I said, I've been there, you know, and it's true. Like, you know, the dynamic does change after you have a child. It does. I always envied like other couples that would talk about, oh yeah, we're having sex 3 or 4 times a week. I'm like, how? Aren't you tired? Like, I just wouldn't understand that, you know? And I will say that like when our son left, like all of a sudden we're alone and it's like, okay, like how do you reignite that spark again? So I literally said I felt like I was dating my husband all over again. It was like all of a sudden we need to figure out, like, I guess we should go on dates. I guess we should try to be more intimate, you know, and things like that. And it really was rediscovering our relationship all over again.
At this stage of your life, do both of you work?
Yeah, he works full time. He works in IT and he's also pursuing music, which was always his dream. So he's doing that on the road. And I, for one, I worked in finance for, I don't know, almost 20 years. So I quit my job and I was just like, well, what am I going to do? So I took some time off to just be a mom, which I hadn't done ever. We both, not only did we work, we were very involved in our community. We were actually involved in local politics. I was on school board. He was a councilman. Like, we were knee deep in our community, you know? So for us, you know, it was like me trying to figure out what I want to do next in my life. So now I've actually started sharing our travels on the road on our Instagram and our socials. And I've also been starting writing a lot. So I've always wanted to write a cookbook. So for me, like, that's what I'm working on. I'm working on my cookbook. I'm also working on a children's book as well. So my passion was always to write. So that's kind of what I'm doing now, is what I'm focusing on that, which is kind of nice.
That's amazing.
To do something different.
Congrats that you're pursuing those lifelong dreams. That's really, really awesome. Mm-hmm. That's what I think people sort of envision getting to do at the stage of life you're at. So how old are you now? You must be in your 40s?
Yeah, I'll be 45.
So you are,
this year.
The thing that's so interesting is you are, because you were a young mom and you like had your son at a younger age, you now are an empty nester, but you're very young still.
Yeah. I find we have our groups of friends. We have friends that had kids later in life. We have friends that have kids in middle school, and then we have friends that are empty nesters. But most empty nesters are a lot older than us. The RV community in general is a lot older than us. But, you know, most people are retired. Right. But we are seeing this influx of young RVers coming. And especially van life has been big on that. I love seeing these kids in their 20s and 30s, like living in a van, traveling, living their best life. You know, remote work has opened those possibilities for people. And it's just great. I mean, for me, you know, we're on the West Coast and my husband works on East Coast time. So yes, he's up at 6 a.m. for work, but he's done by like 2 or 3. You know, and then we have the whole afternoon to go do something.
Can you talk about what exactly you mean when you say that you had to almost redate your husband again?
Not only going on dates, becoming more sexually active again, you know, like getting to that point where, I mean, you know, when you're young and you're with someone, you can have sex multiple times a day and not be tired. As you get older, that's, you know, it's a lot harder. And I mean, I hear stories that people do it, more power to them. I need that energy. But for us, you know, we definitely have had to like work on our intimacy and, you know, focus on our love languages. You know, my husband's very big on physical touch and words of affirmation. I'm more of a acts of service. He'll clean and I get so excited that he cleaned for, you know, he's very much a very physical touch kind of person. And I used to be that way. And I feel like I became more reserved as I got older. I think when we were younger, I didn't care about kissing my husband in public. And now as I got older, I don't really do those things. But I'm trying to be more affectionate, and it's something I've worked on with him, and we still work on it. When our son's with us, it's kind of a bit harder. So the kind of thing that we've done now is that if our son's with us, we do take time to go stay somewhere. So, last month we went to a hotel for 2 days just by the beach. And it was great to have that alone time together, to spend time together and have that private time. We're in 200 square feet. There is no privacy. My bedroom has a curtain. That's it. We can take advantage if our son decides to do laundry, or if he goes, sometimes he wants to use a camp shower because they're more comfortable than the shower we have here, which is very tiny. Like, oh, he's going in a camp shower. Let's go bang one out, So that's kind of what we do sometimes. But you have to find that spark to keep it going, because you become very much fall into that best friend zone. And we are best friends, but that love, you have to constantly continue to get it to grow, and it's something I think that continues to take work, and you have to constantly keep that that burn going. We only really started discovering what our love languages were in the last 2 or 3 years, I'll say, so these things where we sat down and we, in therapy, what is it that we want? And we started communicating more what our needs were. Then we started focusing on trying to do, I don't want to say fulfill each other's needs, but, try to balance each other out, so that we're both getting what we want in the relationship.
And for you in the beginning, as you're trying to show him this physical touch and give him what his love language requires, did you feel like it was unnatural for you to do that? Like, did you kind of feel a sense that you were pushing yourself to do something that wasn't coming naturally?
No, not at all. Not at all. It was just more like, okay, well, what is it that turns you on? Okay, let's work on that. I know I got a good egg, because if I told my husband, you jump 10 times, I'll have sex with you, he probably would. I mean, he just wants to make me happy, right? He really wants me to be happy, and I really appreciate that. And I don't know what I did in this world to have someone like him, but he definitely is very empathetic and always wants to put my needs first. I always have to say, you should tell me what you want, because I feel like you're always worrying about me. And that's something that I really admire about him. He's really good.
What are some, I guess, new avenues that you guys have started exploring sexually as you are in your 40s now?
There's probably more toys now. I was always a little bit more like, I don't know, I don't want to say I was a prude, but I didn't have a very open, my parents didn't talk to me about sex, or my mom specifically, because I was raised by my mom. My mom was a young mom. She was pregnant with me at 16. So she very much didn't want me to start having sex at a young age or anything like that. She was always worried about me ending up pregnant. That was her fear. So she didn't talk about sex with me. And then because of that, I was very naive about a lot of things. I didn't have many partners before my husband, and my husband was very much more exploratory for me than anyone else I've ever been. I've never had a partner who says, what is it that you want? What makes you feel good? And that's something that I'm thankful for. Sex has never been our issue. I mean, maybe quantity, but not quality, right. Which I'm very grateful for. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely, we do have our toys and things like that, but it doesn't take much, honestly. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, it sounds like, I'm curious, have you guys introduced new people?
No, I have not.
Do you plan on doing that on the road at all?
No. Not at all. There is a whole pineapple thing. There's things where people hang a pineapple apparently, and that means that they're swingers. I'm good. I don't need a pineapple. One's enough for me.
Something that I'm incredibly curious about is the general gist of van life and what it's like. First of all, I am going to have you walk through just sort of a typical daily routine. I'm sure every day is different based on where you are. But, I'd love to hear some of the things you do every morning or every day that are just part of your new life now. And secondly, I'd also love you to talk a little bit about, especially now that you're staying at some of those less expensive parks and you're having to find your own water sources and things like that. What does it actually entail to live out of a van?
For us, we have solar, so we use solar sometimes when we're off grid. We also have solar generators. They have gas and electric generators, but we're very much wanting to go the solar route, so we have that. We do have I don't know how many gallons, I want to say it's 40 gallon. You have a fresh tank, you have a gray tank, which is your sink water and your shower water, and then you have a black tank, which is your waste. So for us, our day to day, I mean, we're working during the day, so we usually don't plan anything, and then in the evenings we'll work working on projects that we're working. Edwin's working on music. You know, I may be working on a book. My son's actually working on a graphic novel, and so he's been writing as well. For us, you know, we might go for a walk or do some type of, every time we go to a town, I always want us to do one or two things that town is known for. We're here in Acton, and we went to a farm sanctuary this weekend. Travel days are always what's stressful. It takes us about 2 hours to break down our setup, and then in about maybe half an hour to set up when we get to our destination. So we do try to break it up sometimes, depending where we are. We've been staying in Southern California for the winter because the weather is gorgeous. So we kind of follow weather a lot. So for us, if we're packing up to go somewhere, we'll get up that morning. I usually am like, you know, work on the inside, you know, like, for example, behind me is our water filters, a Berkey, you know, so like, you know, I'll break everything down, like the Berkey and all that kind of stuff, and put everything away and make sure everything's secure, because when you travel, it really is like a earthquake in here. Like everything will go flying, you know. So tape up things, you know, so things that doors don't go swinging and things like that. And we do that, and we'll pack up and we'll hit our destination. We'll do a quick breakfast for us. We usually pack some snacks, and then we hit the road wherever we're going to next.
Wow. Where do you get your water?
One thing I didn't know about was that there are millions of acres across the United States that you can stay for free or very, very cheap. Quartzsite, Arizona is a great example where there is nothing in Quartzsite, but during the winter months, about 1 million RVers travel to Quartzsite and live off grid. And at these places, they offer water services. You can pick up water. There's dump stations where you could dump your tanks. There's no electricity, so everyone's basically living off solar or generators. People will have a tote, for example, where they'll put their sewage, and they will drag the tote and dump their sewage and drag it back, so they don't have to move their RV. We're not there yet. You know, I'm a little weird about driving around with a poop tank, you know, in my car. But we talk about possibly getting a tote at some point. But we can last about a week without dumping our tanks. If there's access to showers, then we can last 2 weeks. But if there's no access to showers, we will last about a week. And people ask, like, what do you do when you shower if you have to conserve water? You know, for us, like, they sell like these little, it comes in a pack, like a kind of looks like a little square, and you wet it a little bit and it suds up, and you literally can just like clean yourself with it. Yeah, people use that. People use baby wipes. We do have an outdoor shower if we need to, you know, hose outside. But a lot of times we'll just go somewhere to take a shower. Like, I have a Planet Fitness membership. I'll go to Planet Fitness to go take a shower. And a lot of the campgrounds will have showers. Even in these boondocking places, they will have some showers. Sometimes you have to pay for it, like $1, a token for like 7 minutes. We've done that as well. So it's definitely a little bit more no frills. I've had to get used to that. But I will say that this is a lot more like glamping than camping, because I've seen people who have setups, they live out of their car. They'll have tents, you know, that still do this full-time, you know, nomadic life. So it's pretty interesting to see. So I think we're kind of spoiled. We have a shower, we have a toilet, it flushes, right. You know, it works just like anything else, you know, running water, all that. So we don't have any issues in that. We just have to conserve. And if we're boondocking, we may also use like paper plates so that we don't use dishes. We have an outdoor grill. We can cook outside if we don't want to dirty pots and pans. Right. So you get creative.
I know you said you're a city girl. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like in order to live the life you're living now that you kind of need to be, I don't know if like a country girl is the word, but do you just need to be way lower maintenance than you were growing up?
I think you have to definitely, there are some things you will have to like get used to, like maybe not showering or washing your hair every day, you know, those kind of things. I was very much worried that I would not get used to this, you know, life, but it hasn't been that hard of an adjustment, because I open my window right now and there are mountains, gorgeous mountains looking outside. I'm going, this is the best life ever. So I absolutely love it. If anything, I think I took a lot of things for granted. I mean, just being outdoors and the national parks, visiting these national parks and state parks, they're just absolutely beautiful. And I really wish I did more of that when I was younger. I've seen you do like a cabin trip, you know, you go up to the mountains with I think you did that like 2 or 3 weeks ago with Michael. You guys went, and it's so nice to just unplug for a while. I don't know, there's something about it. Like, it's just brings so much peace to you that
it really does. Whenever we go on little trips like that, which that one was our baby moon, we just went for 2 nights to the Catskills. Whenever we do that, my husband and I, even in just the first 10 hours that we're not at our home, we have this awakening moment of kind of reorienting ourselves in the scope of our lives and just recognizing that we've been stuck in this kind of mundane daily pattern. And listen, we're so privileged. We love our life. We love our town. We love our house. We love our family. But you really do realize how you just go through the motions of life, especially being people with jobs and being on the clock and really operating like with a standard 9 to 5 or even more work week, and really living for those 2 weekend days when you can just have some time off and relax. It is kind of crazy how the moment you get away, you just have this breath of fresh air, literally and figuratively, and you realize that there's so much more to life than being stuck in that cycle. And you probably feel like you've just broken out.
I do. I mean, I lived a very fast-paced life. I really did. I mean, I was in finance. Sometimes I'd work 50, 60 hours a week. Spent time on school board. That would take time as well. I did a lot of community work. I used to run a vegan food festival in our town that would bring 9,000 people, every year. So I was knee deep in that. And I just ran on autopilot, all the time. And this has definitely made me step back. Even our son, who he came with us on a trip, and I will never forget this trip because he was miserable about having to spend the summer with us in the RV. And I literally said to him, I was like, look, if you hate it, give it a month. And if you hate it, I will send you to your grandma's house. I was like, I don't need you being here moping around when there's such beauty outside your door, right? We went to Utah, and we went to do the national parks in Utah. And I would never forget that we were in Capitol Reef, and it was Memorial Weekend, and we had no cell service. So my kid was miserable because he couldn't go online. And we went on a trip where we were like, let's go on. You know what? I'm tired of everyone fighting. We're going on a hike. Let's everyone pack up. We're going on a hike. We went on this hike, and on this hike, we ran out of water, which was really, really, again, learning, right? And we ran out of water, and my husband started to get dehydrated. So my son said, well, I'm going to go ahead. There's water in the car, and I'll come back. And somehow we missed paths, and we missed each other. And then all of a sudden, my son's out in a canyon. I have no way of contacting him. And my husband is he's drinking his water. He's okay, but I'm panicking. Right. And I literally am walking down the canyon, screaming his name, and it just echoes throughout the entire canyon. And people are like, what's going on? I'm like, I can't find my son. He's out. He went out to look for us, and I don't know where he is. And they're like, well, what does he look like? I'm like, oh, he's a brown kid with an afro. I'm like, you'll spot him easily, right? Because we're in Utah. No one looks like him. I'm like, you'll spot him easily. And like, oh yeah, I did see a kid with an afro, whatever. So there was a group of hikers, and they're like, you know what? So-and-so is an advanced hiker. He knows this trail really good. He's going to go out and find him. You should stay here. And they brought him, and he was fine. He had water with him. He was fine. But it was just the thought that we separated really freaked us out, and it really bonded us. I don't know how to describe it, but afterwards, we were good. No one complained about anything. Everyone was excited about hikes and stuff. And sometimes it takes something to for it to click. What was turning out to be an awful trip ended up being a really great trip. And afterwards, my son was like, let's go on more hikes. And I'm like, okay, but let's bring enough water this time.
Walkie-talkies.
And we had a wonderful time. Yeah, walkie-talkies. But we had such a wonderful time, I remember when he went back to school, he had to write a paper, a memoir. And in the memoir, he wrote about how he felt how having no cell service and unplugging and just touching some grass, he said was so life-changing for him. And it was really amazing to read, because he was just he was like, I don't know, Mom, something about it. I felt so relaxed. He's
inspiring me to go step in my backyard and put my feet in the grass.
I'm sure there's science behind it of just touching grass, of how
there absolutely is. Yes.
Great it is. Yeah.
On that note, that's kind of where I was leading with my next question, which is just going to be about how you feel like this new lifestyle that you've embarked on has changed your overall health.
Yeah, I mean, health is a challenge sometimes too, because I've had a couple of things have happened, I hurt my knee, so I may need knee surgery, things like that. But I think my mental health, if anything, has definitely improved a lot. During the pandemic, I definitely was not in the best mental space. I had a panic attack at one point, and I ended up at the hospital. And I will tell you that I had never had a panic attack. I thought I was dying. And I don't remember what caused the panic attack, but I remember having to go to the hospital, and my husband wasn't allowed to come with me. Nobody could come with me, and I was by myself in the ER, and it scared the heck out of me. And that's when I started to say, like, I need to, like, focus on my mental health. Like, I am not okay. I thought I was okay, and I'm not okay. And now I feel like in a much better mental headspace. I know my family worries sometimes. Like, my mom was like, don't you think you want to go, like, be somewhere in a house or something? Like, and I'm like, I'm happier than I've ever been. Like, this was the best decision we ever made. Yes, it was scary. And yes, the unknown freaked me out. But I love the fact that we can pick up and go anywhere. And we plan trips. We have like a loose itinerary, but like for this summer, like we're heading up north to the Pacific Northwest. We're going to Banff. We're going to Jasper. Like, I'm so
Banff
excited and so thankful. Yeah, I'm so excited. I've never been. So I'm just so excited about what, is to come.
Yeah, I mean, you have to feel in some way like, I'm sure there's normal health challenges, and as you said, you're being more active, so you might need surgery. But I feel like just being out in nature and going on the amount of hikes you're going on and just getting that much fresh air and vitamin D has to be positive for your physical health in some way.
Yeah, it has. It really has.
There are so many things that can keep us up at night. I personally find myself lying there thinking about all the things I need to do the next day or within the next week, whether it's for work or personal stuff around the house. And even once I stop thinking about that huge to-do list, I get sucked into social media scrolling. And I'm not proud of that, but it is addictive and it's not my fault. It can really feel like a million things out there don't want me to sleep at night, but my Hatch Restore does. Hatch helps you choose sleep and then create a bedtime routine that makes you feel better at night and more energized in the morning when you wake up. So we've had a Hatch Restore in Milo's room for a long time now, and it totally changed his sleep habits that we decided to get one for our bedroom too. I love how calming the sleep sounds are before bed, and I also love using the sunrise alarm for such a peaceful way to start the day. If you've had your eye on a Hatch Restore, or if you know anyone in your life who has, please give them this code. Hatch is offering our listeners $20 off a purchase of the Hatch Restore and free shipping at hatch.co/realstuff. Visit hatch.co/realstuff to get $20 off and free shipping. That's hatch.co/realstuff. In your application, you mentioned that through the therapy you've been doing, with yourself and with your husband, that you guys have uncovered some, I think you said, childhood traumas. Can you talk a little bit about what has come up?
Entering my 40s brought out things that I experienced when I was younger that I did not think would affect me as I got older. And for me, I have a lot of food insecurity issues, and I did not realize how bad it was until I went to therapy. I was very big on I need to make sure we have plenty of food in our house. And it sounds, when I say it out loud, it sounds very much insane, but it's not. Even when I got my first apartment, I didn't have much money, and I would go to my mom's house to go get food so I could have food in the house. My fridge was always empty. I just didn't have a lot, and I dealt a lot with that. And my husband also dealt with his own things. We learned about attachment issues being part of it. Imposter syndrome is another one, that came out. So there are things that we focus on. Originally, we went to therapy as just to work on our issues as a couple, but we've discovered that we have our own individual traumas that we have to deal with, and we have in therapy. It really has helped us a lot, especially as a family, to communicate with each other, because we tend to bottle things a lot inside, and it just festers and festers, and then when it comes out, it's never pretty.
I think it's probably so refreshing for listeners to hear someone who's 45, who's just dealing with these childhood issues. You mentioned the food insecurity. I don't think that sounds crazy at all, whatever you said. I think that's incredible that you're addressing that at this stage. And same with the imposter syndrome. There are so many elements that people just live with for years and years and are weighed down by. And to hear a story of someone who just in this portion of your life has started going and addressing and is noticing shifts from that, I think that's very promising. Can you share in general, now that you paid for this RV and you live out of the Airstream, obviously that means you have no monthly rent to pay, you have no mortgage. What is the cost of living right now? Obviously you have to pay for food and a couple of these parks. What would you say is your average monthly expenses?
It varies. I mean, I will say I do pay for my RV. We did put a nice down payment on it, but we do have monthly payments on it.
Oh, so you have a mortgage on this Airstream.
Yeah, I tell people, I mean, I didn't want to spend all our money in one shot. You know what I mean? So we did finance our RV. We financed our truck because we drive a 3/4 ton pickup truck to pull this thing. So I tell people that's my mortgage.
You don't actually drive the Airstream.
No, it's attached to a 3/4 ton pickup truck, diesel truck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we hook it up, we hitch it up to it, and we pull it along with us.
Do you mind sharing what the actual mortgage that you're paying is, or the monthly expense on the Airstream?
Yeah, I want to say I pay more than I'm supposed to every month, but I think it's $900 a month, I believe.
And then what about food?
For food, I probably spend about $150 a week on food. Maybe not so much, sometimes $200 a week. Gas can be costly sometimes because we drive a diesel truck. So when we fill up our truck, it's about $120 to fill up, maybe $150 if gas is high to fill up the truck. But it'll last us about 2 weeks because we're usually not going too far. I would say my monthly expenses are probably about, maybe about $2,500 to $3,000 a month. Yeah. I mean, it would be a lot less if I didn't have to pay for the RV or the truck. But that's okay. We get a lot of people who come up to us because of the Airstream. It's considered a luxury RV, a luxury travel trailer. So people will come and ask us questions. And I always tell them, if you're going to buy an Airstream, you can buy an Airstream used and pay half of what we paid for, maybe even less. We wanted something new because we did not have any experience, so I wanted to have a warranty on it, and I wanted to customize it because I knew that we were going to be working out of it. Like, we have an office in it, things like that. We have a hatch, it opens up in the back. All these things I knew were like luxury things that I wanted, but you can do this life for a lot cheaper. And you see people buy school buses for $5,000 and they will rebuild up the whole school bus.
I fell down a YouTube rabbit hole of people redoing school buses.
Yeah,
cool
I mean, I would love to do a school bus, but I'm not that handy.
For people who have never been in an Airstream, I know you said your bed is just a curtain that you pull and that you have a hatch, and you kind of gave us a little visual, but can you just sort of give us top level, what's the square footage of this living space and what type of amenities are in there?
So yeah, it's about 200 square feet. I have a front bedroom queen bed. So the front of my trailer is the bed. It's a queen size bed. It's got a little nightstand on one side, on each side, and the whole bed lifts too, so you can put storage underneath it. And then coming forward, you will reach there. I have a split bath. So I have a shower on one side, and then on the other side is the toilet with cabinets and a medicine cabinet and a bunch of shelves inside there. And then once you come forward, I have a pantry, which is just like it slides out, and cabinets, and that's where all my food is. The fridge is actually pretty good size. I think it's 8 cubic feet, so it's probably the size of an apartment fridge in New York City. I would say maybe a little smaller. And then behind me here is our stove. I don't know if I could turn it a little bit, but if you can see, there's my kitchen right there. So for those who are watching on YouTube, you can see my kitchen.
Yeah, we're getting a little MTV Cribs action here.
A little MTV Cribs action. But yeah, I had to make sure my espresso machine came with us because that's important. And then the sink's behind me. And then over here on this side is our table. And there you can see the hatch. It opens up back there. So, and then there's cabinets above us all. There's like all these cabinets here that have stuff as well. So, and then over here you can see where you could press the tanks to see how much your tanks are full, because you got to keep an eye on that. We probably dump our sewer once a week, so that we keep an eye on. But our gray tank, which is the shower and sink water, I would say we dump it about every 2 days, because we're at a campground, so we can use as much water as we want.
Where do you dump the sewage?
So there's a hose that gets attached to your RV, and you screw it in, and literally it's like a long hose, and then you'll pull the lever and out will come the sewage, and it'll go right into the hole. There's like literally a hole in the ground. Oh. It doesn't smell the greatest either, so you got to wear gloves and stuff, but you kind of get used to it. That was the one thing that was like I was not looking forward to. I was like, I don't want to dump tanks. But now it's a piece of cake now. You get used to it.
My husband and I, right after we had our kid, all of a sudden the whole world is in this work from home mode, and we realized we could theoretically be living anywhere right now and having our current jobs. But once we had a baby, it felt a lot harder to take him away from his grandparents and his aunts and uncles and our community and just start somewhere new with him. But Michael and I dream of moving to a warmer climate and just having this very different life. And we've talked about how probably the time for us to do that is going to be after our kids go off to college. And there's some of that is exciting, and it's like we have this part 2 to look forward to. But on the other hand, it feels like we're living for this time 20 years down the line. Not that we're not living now and that we're not enjoying the now, but I am very much looking forward to this phase 2. The one thing about moving and completely starting over and going to maybe even a new country for that phase 2 that I worry about, at least, is thinking about, on my children's behalf, the fact that we'd be leaving the town that they grew up in. And the only reason I say this is because my parents stayed in my house that I grew up in all the way until last year. So I left for college in 2010, and they moved out of the house in 2023. And so for 13 years, I had this home base to go home to, and I was able to see my high school friends, and our family had this meeting place. Does your son ever talk about how it felt that his home that he grew up in was no longer a place he could go back to?
It's really interesting because I feel like I was very much attached to things, and he does not have attachments. He doesn't. He literally could live anywhere. And I don't understand that so much, I'll be honest. But he does not have that attachment that he needs to go back home somewhere. But I felt that when I went back to Phoenixville to visit, I went to move him back to school in August. And I went there and I remember thinking, like, how am I going to feel coming back to our hometown? And I realized that I've moved on, and leaving was scary. But I will say that it was the best decision to just get up and go, because I feel like we wait so long for the one day. And if anything, the pandemic taught me was that one day may never come. If it wasn't for the pandemic, I don't think I would be living in an RV. I'll be honest with you. Like, it really was the wake up call for me to see, like, life is too short. What am I waiting for?
Knowing what you know now and feeling the way you feel now. If you were someone in my shoes who's just at the start of a family and has young kids, would you go off and do this now with kids, or would you wait until you're more in your stage of life?
Honestly, I don't know, because I feel like with the grandparent situation, it's hard because you want your kids to be near your grandparents. But at the same time, I've met a lot of families on the road, and I can't tell you, I'm surprised by how many families live on the road with multiple kids. But if anything I've learned is that kids are resilient and they will adapt. It's us who are afraid of adapting.
You know, it's easy to hear you talking and for me to envision the life you lived before, where you tell me you were so plugged into the community, you worked in finance, very busy, and probably just, normal amounts of stress from being a homeowner and a parent. Mm-hmm. And it's easy for someone to look at you now and to see the life you're living and to feel like, wow, leaving that situation and selling everything and going on the road, it almost conjures up images of you leaving all your troubles behind and, running to the wind. Do you feel like this took all your troubles away, or do you still carry around normal human burdens in your current situation?
Yeah, I still carry normal human burdens. Like, it's not like everything was a magic fix. I feel more at peace in this lifestyle, and I don't know how long we will do it for. I really don't. I talk about eventually buying some land and building a smaller home. I will never own a house with 4 bathrooms ever again. Just won't do it. You know what I mean? Like, I will buy a small home with maybe 1, maybe 2 bathrooms at most. But my husband's like, well, after we do this, we could do this in another country. And I'm like, oh, you're pushing it now, But he dreams of doing it elsewhere, and maybe we will. But for now, we'll just see how long this takes me. I mean, I thought I would have covered most of the country by now. I have not. In 18 months, I have not. I think we've done 7 national parks. I thought we would have done at least 20 by now.
Overall, this conversation must be so intriguing to people. I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but I can imagine people are listening to this just feeling such a sense of, what's the word? Delight? Or it's like a lightness, a feeling of lightness that it gives you to hear someone's story like this and to just see the potential of really having a very different future than what your current present is. And even for people who like their current present, I'm included in that category. I'm very happy with where I am. We just landed in this town less than a year ago, and I'm excited to spend the next 20 or so years here. However, it's so refreshing to hear there is the possibility of a, quote, phase 2 and a new start and something different. It can be very daunting, even if you like your life, to feel like your life is going to be the exact same as it is today until the day you age and die. And it's so refreshing to just envision that you can really build the life that you want for yourself and start anew. And it doesn't have to be incredibly expensive. In fact, it can be selling all your things, making money from the sale of a house, and then living life a lot more simply.
It really is. I tell people all the time that, if you want something, there's no reason why you can't do it. You know what I mean? And like, I love inspiring people in this lifestyle. I mean, today I got a text from a friend who's like, we're camping. We rented a camper van, and it's just like so exciting to see people go ahead. And she's like, it's scary, but I'm like, you guys will be fine. Like I always tell people, I'm like, you can always message me on Instagram if you need help or questions. There's so much. Like for us, like YouTube was great for us. There was so many things that we learned about just watching about RVers and YouTube. We had no idea what we were getting into. People are surprised when we tell them the first time we went full-time RVing, never RVing before. They were shocked by that. But we didn't even get to take a practice trip. We were supposed to take a practice trip and I got COVID. So literally our first time camping in the RV was when we sold the house and left. We've learned along the way. We continue to learn, and it's just not impossible. I feel like we worry so much about having to do this nitty gritty grind every day that we don't stop to enjoy life. And I have friends now who like they have a house and they're buying a little camper to go take weekend trips with their kids. So it's not impossible. So Lucie, you can get a little camper.
I could. You might see an Airstream in my driveway one of these days. Look out.
And look out, right? And then you go on these weekend trips. You could rent them as well. So you can always do, rent one of those Cruise America, Class C's.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, Giselle, I am on the verge. I mean, I already have my speech planned to go to Michael after this conversation and basically pitch him on the idea of becoming RV campers in the future. So
you can always reach out to me.
I will.
If you have
and
any
if
questions.
People want to just follow your life and see what you're up to, is your Instagram account public?
Yeah, it's called From the Hatch because we have a hatch in our Airstream. So From the Hatch, and we're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff. I have some like long form videos that I'm working on that I'll be doing. I just love to share these experiences, and I tell people, especially like I want to emphasize, like especially people of color. I feel like we did not grow up in the outdoors as much, or the fear of going outside, right, is very much instilled in there. And I love seeing these, like, now there's a whole like movement of like Black RVers and creators out there sharing their stories, and they're so inspiring. This is our country just as much as everyone else. We should go out and explore it because it's absolutely beautiful.
I can't wait to hear how many people are inspired by this episode. I'm sure we're going to get comments. I'm just about to follow your page, and I'm going to keep tabs on you and, keep sharing the content with Michael. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I knew from the moment I read your submission just how interesting this conversation was going to be, and it's clear to me that taking risks like this and embarking on these really big life changes, although they're scary, they definitely turn you into just a more, I guess the word is, interesting person, a more well-rounded person who can just have the coolest conversations ever.
Yeah, and it's been great. I've met so many amazing people. I've joined different communities, and it's just, I love hearing people's stories because we're all so different, but we all have one thing in common, and that's just wanting to enjoy life and our time in this world that we have.
Thank you so much for coming on. This was such a fun conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Real Stuff. I'm Lucie Fink. Don't forget to follow the show on social media at The Real Stuff Pod. And if you're liking these episodes, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a written review. It helps the show so much. And if you're feeling called to come on the show, visit luciefink.com/apply and tell us your story. We'll see you next week for another intimate conversation on The Real Stuff.